if you were looking for parks and public spaces, you are in the right place. And we are doing our darndest to bring the setting of a park into the room today on this blustery, cold day. So please enjoy some fragrances of the park, some sounds of the park as we're acclimating and kind of getting into the space. Just to get us started, I wanted to say hello and good morning. My name is Kimberly Serrano, and I am the director of the Center for Inclusion and Belonging at the American Immigration Council. And we're going to be channeling a little bit of play today and getting in that spirit of being in the park. So we brought our inner children with us. So please enjoy. This is evidence that all of your speakers were very fashionable in the late 80s, early 90s also. And can I invite folks to give a hello as well?
Good morning, everyone. Hola, mi nombre es Daniela Paz Peterson. I'm based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I work with the Trust for Public Land.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie Simmons. I work at Trust for Public Land, and I am based in Seattle.
And we're recording, so we may be moving around a little bit just to try to make sure that we're capturing for the sake of video as we're going today. So we're so excited to have you join this session. It says you're a curious crew, that you came to a session with an immigration nonprofit, parks nonprofit, to talk about parks at a social connection conference. So this is a really fun array of what might be considered strange bedfellows, but I hope that by the end of the hour or so, you'll begin to see and understand why we're in this configuration, in this space, and in this setting, talking about this really important topic of the role of public space and the value that parks and public spaces can provide as we think about fostering connection. So just to give us a little bit of grounding and getting us started, I want to share a little bit of the origin story for why this configuration of folks is joining today. If we were the Avengers, this would be the moment that Spider-Man got bit by the spider, which takes us back to 2019, actually. So those pre-pandemic days. My organization was, at the time, we're an organization that works to redefine and expand understanding of who belongs in the places that we all call home. We bring special expertise around bridging across the line of difference around immigration status and immigration experiences. And one of the things that we were seeing in the late teens was a lot of really complicated dialogue around immigration in this country. And we were beginning to think differently about how do we shift that conversation. And so we launched a national communications campaign. We did a lot of audience research, and that campaign was called Belonging Begins With Us. And so we were communicating about what it is to foster everyday acts of belonging, how essential and how important that is, and what it looks like to extend that across different experiences. And as part of that effort, one of the things we kind of came in with was a recognition that the role that national communications can play in terms of changing a conversation and changing climate is valuable. It is necessary but not sufficient. And so there needs to be a complementary ground game and a set of ways that folks who are getting exposed to messages about belonging can interact and have an experiential dynamic around those themes in community. So in designing this campaign, what we were looking for was who are some partners, and this is where kind of the Avengers analogy comes in. Who are some kind of folks that represent key components of society that most people in the audience that we're talking to are interacting with on a daily basis. So, we started thinking about community centers. We identified and started working with the Y, who I know, we had a chance to hear from Suzanne yesterday, and, been working with her team since 2019. We were thinking about museums. So we started working with the American Alliance of Museums. We're also thinking about campuses. We're working with the Council on Christian Colleges and Universities. So that kind of coalition of ground partners, a key piece of that is we were thinking about what are the settings and spaces that are public in which folks are coming together on a regular basis. So parks are a big part of that. There are parks in every community across the country and outdoor spaces. These are vital, dare I say, neutral spaces where folks are interacting across difference on a regular basis. And we were so pleased to be in a relationship and get to know the Trust for Public Land as part of this process. And one of the really powerful outcomes for me and the nature of the work that I do was seeing kind of at the outset a desire and an aspiration for, let's try to come together. Let's see if, we're kind of coming from different sectors. We're all sort of working on different issues, but that core overlap for us is around connection and belonging. And I think a question we all came in with was sort of, how far can this road go? And in working with the Trust for Public Land, what was so powerful was the way that they harness the power of social infrastructure and going beyond the physical setting of the park and thinking about what are the different ways that parks and public spaces can be activated, can serve to bring folks together across difference, and even created a whole community strategies team, which was a new thrust for the organization at the time, to contain this type of work. So just to give a little snapshot of what that's ended up looking like, we made an initial grant to the Trust for Public Land in 2021, spring of 2020, that has now become a $7 million program at TPL. And they've gone from doing 7 mini pilots in 2021 to another round of pilots in 2023 with 9 other locations, to 12 active demonstration projects in 2025 and 2026. Keep me honest on the numbers if I've misrepresented those.
You got it.
But part of what has excited me about that, about getting to be a part of this work, is seeing that potential for scale that has been possible in working with Trust for Public Land, with the networks and relationships that they have across the country. But also, and I think you'll hear and experience this in the session today, some of the ways that they've been really thoughtful and innovative around measurement. And as part of that initial cohort, Trust for Public Land really pushed our whole group in thinking about, how do we know what we're doing is working? How do we, as we're thinking about using public space to foster trust, foster social connection, how do we measure that? How do we begin to think about that? So they really pushed our whole cohort, led us to innovate a tool with an organization called Over Zero, called the Belonging Barometer, to figure out a way to measure belonging that could be used by community leaders. And TPL has been continuing that effort with a community compass, as well as putting together a whole framework called the Common Ground Framework, which is summarized in a green paper, which is by, if you've read white papers, you've read gray papers. Have you read a green paper? So I just wanted to give a little bit of that setup for some of the ways that being able to work together, to kind of work in partnership and collaboration, has led us to this session in this setting today, to be able to sort of think a little bit about what's being learned over the last 4 or 5 years, with both some focus in a specific park setting, as well as looking at impact overall. So Danny, could I pass it over to you for getting us grounded?
Yeah, hi then, Daniela here. I believe that the picture was taken in the 90s. I want to point out, we're gonna move forward. It's kind of clarifications. Please, if you need to sign out, go to the bathroom. We don't want to get personal. You don't come out here, so you are interested.
I'm going to take that personally.
So please, we just want to be very mindful of your bodies, our bodies here. So also for us too, we disappear. And then this one is more for me than for you, but I think we're gonna take it as a group. I need like it's my nervous system. So we're gonna do this activity, and we were very intentional to bring you other things to look at, so colors and things, and we're trying to bring the park into here. So that was kind of like how we work in communities, because all the time we say we work with communities, but we don't show, we don't experience how. So we don't do this all the time, but kind of like some of these exercises, because when you're in a park, you are actually feeling the grass. So first, I want to invite you to sit straight if you want. I'll be very intentional with your the plant of your feet, if you can push down, and imagine that you are mixing grass, or like you are touching grass with your feet. And then we can do this
we're gonna start replaying. You want to have candy around, so we can do it as a group, or I can leave you to do it by yourself, the 5 steps. So, Esther, you do it as a group or Miguel? What do you prefer?
Group.
Group. Okay.
Together.
Together. Okay, that's great.
So we're gonna, I'm very much doing the character from presenting my true self. So focus in your mouth
And name for yourself, what are you tasting? If you need to help, we have some candy there. And then be aware of the smells. You can recognize 2 smells. Or it might give you 2 smells in a park. I normally like popcorn in a park. Take popcorn. Smell. And then what are you here? You can name 3 things for yourself. And then start moving your hands. And you can use it as a medium to touch 4 things. So touch 4 different things. Different textures, temperatures. And then I want to invite you, if you have your eyes closed, to open your eyes and start looking for 5 things that you can start like pointing with your fingers. So, right. Hope that was helpful to bring us here and to think more about cards. So how I was telling you, we are gonna move forward with, we're in a connection, social connection. So I don't think you're seeing 5 right there, but I don't like that name, so I'll call it like warmers. We're gonna do one that we actually did in Chattanooga in the project that I wanna talk with. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna kind of like go through to the exercise that we're gonna do together, and then we're gonna restart. So you can kind of have like the full picture. Okay. But first, in this exercise, the indication is when you're meeting a person, well, when I'm meeting a person, I'm gonna say I say it. My empathy part like kind of gets really just really high. Meaning, when I'm talking with someone and I really want to connect, I kind of get like this maybe scared the person, very eye contact, very intense, and I start looking for things that we have in common, like right away. So your name, I'm gonna imaginary so to put his, and I start looking, I was like, oh, I've been there. I like that ice cream, and I know that person too. And I stop listening to the person because I really want to find those connections. So for the next exercise, hi, welcome. We just started. I'm gonna ask you to put curiosity first and second empathy. So kind of try to like that muscle. As you've been, close to my 40s, I started walking around, I think 1 year or so. So I had like over 35 years experience walking. Do I still fail? Yes, I fail all the time. So that doesn't mean that I'm not a good walker, but I'm always still making mistakes. Mm-hmm. The same with listening. If we have able bodies and you've been listening for X amount of years, doesn't mean that we listen correctly or kind of like we don't think about the muscle of listening. So I really invite you to think about listening as a muscle that we want to exercise for the rest of the time. So curiosity first, empathy second. That's kind of like how we want to move forward in this exercise. So first, I'm going to invite you to pick. So we're going to go through. You don't have to do it now. So the first step is we're going to go and find a partner. And the invitation phase to stick with the partner until the end of the session. Then when you meet the partner, you want to like warm up again, say your name, and maybe one thing, but don't always like, don't complicate. What kind of help you feel that you've been in this sense? Maybe you don't have to answer, but like just don't overcomplicate, easy peasy, nothing complicated.
The third step is when you gotta choose roles. So we have two roles. One is the speaker, one is the listener. And we're gonna switch. So we're gonna have to figure out who was first and who was second. The fourth step, the speaker is gonna have 1 minute to describe the perfect day. Well, as a child, I forgot to put that. So you're gonna have 1 minute to describe your perfect day as a child. Nothing can be wrong because you know your childhood, so all answers are welcome. And then the step 4 has like actually two sides. This is the other side. The listener is gonna listen quietly and not asking questions, no asking clarifications, no like over affirmation. Just listen there. And then in the step 5, the listener is gonna have to repeat what they just heard without the condiments. Meaning, if you ask me, if someone tells me, oh, I'm from California, when I give you back, it's like, oh, I love California. It's really similar to Chile, where I'm from, and I love the colors, and all of that just like gets on the side, and you just repeat what you just heard. You don't add anything. And then in the step 5, we are gonna switch roles. So the person that was listening now is gonna be speaking, and the person that was speaking now is gonna be listening. So, this is like the question that we're gonna go through. So step 1, please stand up or turn around and find a partner.
Hello.
Still getting jobs.
How are you doing? I should be you should say bikes yes equals center you
Someone?
is providing burst is
Are we even numbers? That's normally what I do in a bar. Community. Okay. I think you find your partner. Are we missing someone? Is someone in a partner? Okay, are all in? Perfect. I can guess that you introduced yourself already. If you can maybe think about what make you feel that you're being decent, that's something that you can share in the next 30 seconds. It's just like you one thing. So think first about what made you feel like you need to listen to. And now you can share that with your partner.
see does it knows is up is you mean
I rarely I come back to just feeling so when it
Attempt work yourself follow
That was enough. Two puppies. Okay, everyone.
She's gonna whiffle again.
We filming used to that all the time. So now I see we're done with that. And I will be children too, so I'm sorry. Yeah, no, yeah. Bye. Who is the speaker in the group? Can you raise your hand? Who's gonna be the speaker first? Okay. So that's right. It's the speaker. You have to answer in 1 minute, or you have to describe what is a perfect day as a child. So for you, when you were a child, what was your first day? You're gonna have 1 minute to answer that. The listener again, curiosity first, empathy second. So you are gonna remember what they're saying. And this time I'm not gonna actually do that like fingers. I'm gonna have yeah, I'm gonna learn. So it's gonna start now and it's gonna go up in 1 minute. So you can start answering the question.
my bird and it keeps off me this This is such a good exercise.
It's such a good. I'm like writing down curiosity first, empathy second. Like,
Yeah,
are we tracking long or fast?
I think maybe long.
Okay.
Started so we were 25 minutes in. We had 15 minutes for the icebreaker, 8 minutes for no. I think we're on time, right?
I'll check. Let's see. So we have to.
I think we're pretty good
Okay.
because we had 15 minutes going icebreaker, 8 minutes for Kim. That's 23 minutes, so we should be at 10:30.
We didn't start it a little bit. We're it's a good group. This.
Yeah, me too. Danny, do you want me to be the timer?
Okay, the minute the alarm didn't work. What are we? A minute the alarm didn't work, but the minute that. So that was 1 minute. That was 1 minute for you to describe your first day as a child. So now we're gonna switch. So the person that was listening, and it's yes, I'm so sorry, guys. The listener is gonna have 1 minute. You gotta get back what is here. So Carrie is gonna be
Got it.
in charge of that, and you have 1 minute now.
Go.
That's it. Choose a rare. Get books. Get egg bright. I repeat this really big robots were ears are good to speak up in local account basis of what the things are.
A foot debate. What? I'm supposed to end at 11:15, and
1:20.
Your dad is driving outside.
Well, this is progression. And before you think where this came from, this is not from me. This is kind of like I don't know if you heard the book. What is this?
Super communicators.
It's a procedure like that develop friendship, kind of like among time. So it's a progression. So this is our first question for this session, and I want to remind when you are listening and then you are kind of like repeating what you just heard, you can actually interact. So you don't remember, you just get silence. And it's fine to be uncomfortable too. Like if we need to like stare or sit or move, but we are not gonna fill out time with like clarifications on like what we have in common because we're just listening. And sometimes it really isn't just the first part. We have to be okay with that. So now the listener is gonna describe their perfect day as a child. So are we there? Okay. And we're gonna have a minute. You don't have to use a minute either. So if your best memory was like eating ice cream, that's enough. So it's a minute, but you don't have to use a home cut. Okay, let's do it.
Last. So I this week.
Is this the same person that? It's similar to like the 36 questions that make you fall in love.
yes. Yeah. And then you stare deeply into each other's eyes for 2 minutes or something without. There's something about I love the curiosity first, empathy second part of it because it is.
You can empathize way too quickly.
You can empathize way too quickly. And I think many of us are socialized to empathize early and often.
Yeah.
And like, it's okay to stay a little detached. There's also something about just being listened to for 60 seconds, like to sit in the spotlight.
Yeah. 8 seconds. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, the minute.
I don't know why.
Again, the alarm.
Well, it's like a kitchen timer.
Okay, that was a long minute for me. So now the person that was listening is gonna repeat one thing. Remember, without condiments, without questions, without clarifications, without points of connection. Yes, the only thing that you just remember. And if you remember this 10 seconds, the other ones are in silence. I just feel it. Okay, so we're gonna start with the minute.
Well, you know, Robin. Research specialty. Layer one. And like with your person, the road of the laws, and
Yes. This slow safety guns building.
Ding, 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 ding. I don't know why it's so quiet.
We're done with the minutes listening with this part, the exercise. We're done with the minute. The alarm is so strict, like very loud. And I'm not gonna want us to be, yeah. So sorry about that. So now we can debrief a little bit. So if you wanna sit down or remember that we really encourage to stay with the partners throughout the session. It's not an obligation, but it makes things easier or show the point that we want to write. Is someone there that want to share how they felt doing this? Okay, it was like something new, something not very comfortable. I don't know. What surprised you about the exercise?
I don't know if it was a surprise, but I kind of felt like I was him, this child having that day.
Yeah. Oh, that's a surprise. Yeah, that's a big. Yeah, I think that would be to happen. That would happen.
I found that that when I was listening, my inner voice was like coming up with the questions I wanted to ask, and then because I couldn't say anything, I think my physical reaction were much bigger. Like,
yeah, that's that's kind of like the sting is there. Yeah, what else?
No, similar. Just how hard it was not to ask follow-up questions and wanting to keep asking more.
And that, what about the listening part? Like it's up that shift. Were you put more intention in that?
I felt like a lot of people, in order to remember what someone's telling you, you often repeat it back to them in some way. And so I felt like it was harder not to say anything and remember what I just heard. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Knowing that makes a lot of sense. And again, this exercise is not like just to make you uncomfortable, but to think about the listening or active listening as a muscle that we normally don't practice. Like, again, I still felt like tripped all the time. And I've been walking for a long time. So doesn't mean that because we listen, we are listening in the best way that we can or how the right person deserves to be listened.
We've done this training with our staff a few times, and it is really interesting observing others have this conversation. You can start to hear someone describe like, oh, I love a lazy day at home and we're sitting on the carpet and we're like having a warm cup of tea, and the person repeating it back is like, oh, you love Sunday mornings, you're playing board games on the carpet. And the first person says like, I don't like board games. So it's demonstrative, like sort of a weird constructed way to have a conversation, but it can prove the point that like sometimes we fill in gaps with our own memories that we don't mean to. And like sometimes that's not actually accurate.
You're a very nice person, or we're just not listening.
Yeah.
And that's fine too. Again, the muscle. We think because we can hear something doesn't mean that what you said. So keep that. This is a series of, we did a series of workshops in Chattanooga, and we're going to get into that. And we did all of this with community members or participants. So because it's a progression, we did it over time. And that's what one of the things that we measure over time. So, well, thank you for the active listening. We're not done. So that was the first part. And now I want to bring you to Chattanooga, one step at a time. So again, Daniela Peterson, my beautiful accent is from Chile. And if you can understand what I'm saying or I need to repeat something, just raise your hand. I may ask you also, is it repeat something? Repeat that accent. And I actually agree with the southern accent, but not like the rest of the so we did an intergroup, content mine community university house. So in the region story, we met with the council what I did a repair operation about intergroup combat and coefficient. I was at Donichi's because we saw it all the time happening, but we had just really good stories. We didn't have the data and kind of back at the story or to prove the point. We all feel it when you're working apart, you feel different. When you say hi to someone and you don't know, you also feel something different. And when you start meeting the same person at the park over time, things happen. And we also believe that has to be, and it's very related with democracy. Like for us, democracy happens outside. And that's not just it's how it started. Back in the day, that's where democracy was exercised. I'm not saying that we should go back because just men were allowed to exercise it, but just think about that space and play have a place to have for democracy to happen. So how many of you actually this is how many of you are familiar with Treasure Pound Blank before? Okay. Oh, great. Maybe you know more than me, but I'm gonna just a little brief. So we work with the Trust of Public Land. We're an environmental and conservation organization. We have been around for 50 years. In the area, in Chattanooga, we have been for 30 years, and very similar here in Atlanta. We're in over 30 states, and we do conservation, but focusing in the human experience. This is my takeaway of Trust of Public Land. So, means the center community, and in the conservation that we do, but that's kind of like wholesale progression. We have shifting over time. So we are not your regular conservation agency because first we don't own that. We do the acquisition, but then we donate the land to a public entity, and that can look very different. So if you're familiar with Zion National Park, we did the biggest land acquisition in over 50 years. But then here, do you know where Dr. King, kind of like Versailles and where you up? We also did the conservation of that. And we also did a bench that I want to show you. So it can look like a playground. So our work is very different, but also centering what the human experience more now in the urban core. And in the urban core, we have parks. So for me, it's really, I hope for you too, but when I think about parks, I think about salads. Very me. So it's October, and I know this spiritual thing that you do potlucks, right? So if I have a potluck in my house, and I tell you, please, Carrie, can you bring a salad?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm expecting that Carrie's gonna bring is a salad that is ready, most likely in a bowl, and I know my friend, he also is gonna bring like utensils.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if Carrie shows up with an empty bowl? I'm gonna say, where's the salad? Or he shows up with the lettuce and not a bowl and nothing else. I'm gonna have to make up, and I'm gonna have to ring a bowl, and then it's smaller, and it's not gonna look good, and also not gonna taste rich. So when we think about parks, we normally just think about the physical infrastructure. So we just think about the bowl, and we have this beautiful bowl with like a very, you can touch it, it's handmade, you can have a whole story behind. But we just think about like the benches in the park and how many trees, if it's too hot, the playground, the parking. You're gonna be surprised how many people think about parking when we think about parks. So that's it, physical infrastructure. And for a long time, we were really good at it. And we are still really good at it. If you want to, I'm not promoting, but we are the people for really high, very complex projects. So now we think about the salad, the vegetables, which is the social infrastructure. In the past, we have this really good bowl, and then we bring the salad, and then the salad was too small or too much for the park. So what we're saying now is when we think about physical infrastructure, we need to think about the social infrastructure at the same time as an ingredient. So what we're saying is it's not one or the other, but it's both. And what we do is when we think about both at the same time, we do use face of resources. And I'm sure people feel more identified and part of the community. So that's the reason that I think about salads when I think about parks. For you, what we want to kind of live in thinking is have to think about the social and the physical infrastructure both together. My background is in social work, so I always been thinking in the social part. I mean, that's why I study. And the reason why I work in public lands or post-development plan is because I saw that you work with the community and then you have the expression of the community. Meaning we are shaping our cities, meaning we are allowing public space to tell their stories, meaning in my position as an immigrant, many of our stories are not told for multiple reasons. So when we allow community to shape the public spaces, we're also allowing to kind of like tell your stories. Okay, so all of that in mind, think about the park, the social aspect, and then I here have, if you are not familiar with Chattanooga, 2 hours from here, 2 hours from Nashville, and this part of Chattanooga is like kind of like in the south part, really close to Georgia. And where we did this, the first workshop that we did was here in Alton Park, South Chattanooga, the original South Chattanooga. If you go to South Chattanooga, right now we have the South Side District, which is like a very marketing fake. So this is like the OG South Side, mostly African American, back in the 60s, 50s, very affluent community, and now very in decline. Well, and this is a really sad map because this was last year we got an EPA grant to release all this connection from the river all the way there, and we will sit at the beginning of the year. But we keep working on it. It's gonna happen. And our first intervention was in the Southside Community Park. So we have a low-income community, historically Black, a community that went, that any other community as in the country that kind of didn't have resources and investment. They are 1.3 miles from the river, but they don't have a safe access to the river. And then you are more familiar when you go to Chattanooga, we have Southside, we have East Lake, and then right here we have Rossville, which is in Georgia. So we have low-income Black, low-income Latino, and low-income white. So it's a triangulation that happens here, and the borders, they're very blurry, like people started mixing. So with that work combined that we were connecting, the projection is to connect people in our neighborhoods and to nature. So we work to connect people to nature, but here you want to say that we connect people to people so people can connect to nature. So where did we start? We started working with UMass. We started thinking how we can measure connection among people in parks. And one of the difficulties that we find is like it's not many reference out there to a quantitative study when measuring what happened when people come together. So we thought it was going to be a year. It took over 3 years. We involved over 500 people on it, being participants, facilitators, researcher, partners, accredited partners. And I can talk a long time for this research, but we're not here to talk about just the research. Also, my partner, the researcher, is not here. But what I want you to kind of like understand is like what it took to do something like this. So this is not a call for each part to do it, but that we need to prove that what we do actually have this kind of effect on people. and I keep doing it a few times this week. So the values behind kind of like how we move forward designing this research was like intentionality, proximity. I don't know if Price Evenson, I want to talk about proximity. Safety, I don't believe in safe space, but to create actually some kind of safety or like intentionality, the space for people to feel a degree of safety, and then the option to choose. So very clear that you can eat any moment and you don't have to answer everything, and you can move your body if you're able. Okay, so how those values, how these like kind of thinking about we need to prove or what happened with people from different backgrounds come together, and we're gonna have to do service, pre-service, post-service, how we do it. So here again, the intentionality, proximity. So intentionality, we work with a designer, kind of explain. This is gonna reach out people that speak English and Spanish. So all our material have like a taste of both, and trying to like move forward with that. And then when we talk about service, when they sent me this first survey, it was a Word document that was catastrophic painful to answer. So we work with the designer, can we do this more, friendly to the eye? And can you design something that we can print in any printer and we don't need like special paper or anything? But then how we create safety or to feel like this is just for you, the intentionality. So we create real stickers. So we cook the service in folders, and then you have to like read off the stickers. So that was just for you, and kind of like see there that no one else is gonna see it result more than us. So little things throughout the steps. Okay, so you understand that we gather neighbors in parks in the Southside Community Park for the first time. We did 4 times. So in the first time, I showed them up. And then, okay, so we got the neighbors together to do what? So this is when we work with the researchers, which architects, designer, placemaker, which is a little design firm called Little Things Lab. And we gave them kind of like, we are going to be doing this research. So we're putting an outward lab. And we need an activity that people all feel that they are the same when they're doing it. So no one should be like the lead on it. It's more about like they can all be part in a very like transversal way. And then the safety again in this case for me, like I don't want any like power tools. I want waivers design. So all of this is an ensemble. So you don't have to use any kind of power tools or anything. Well, at the end, but it's one person and it's like in our team, so it's no participants. So I want to show you that this is the first prototype that we came, and then we have, I think, up to 5 prototypes, and we ended up doing this one. So we break down this bench in 3 workshops. So people have to come back each time to do different parts of the bench, and they didn't see the bench until the end. So they didn't know how it was going to look like until it was that. So I want to show you a little bit of the process here. How we assign participants was random, randomized, kind of simple. If any researcher here, it was like on-site, live. So the researcher was doing the pairing, the Excel sheet as people was like coming in. Was very stressful, but we got it. And the last one, we got it right. I mean, the beginning, but it was less stressful over time. And then they hit this kind of like, we break out in groups. Each group had a facilitator that was trained for the community. Again, proximity. We didn't bring facilitators from communities that didn't know where the park even was. They knew their neighbors. We also worked with like leadership in the communities. That this Margaret is in charge of like over 80 apartments, low-income apartments. And then they start also we work with artists. So all kind of like how men were painting, and the material that we're using was guided an artist created that part. So that was the first part. As you can see, it's like I don't know. You can imagine if you don't know that that's a bench or how the bench was going to work out. And in each of the workshop, we have what you just did. So we have these like warm-up exercises throughout the groups. So it was the same group 3 times, and in each time we have a pre and a post survey. And that was kind of like how I was like looking at the end. And here is kind of what we learned about and saw that we knew already, but I mean, it's really good that we have the numbers. I didn't bring the graphics or actually like the diagrams, but I want you to kind of like understand or like remember that what we saw was like the active welcoming part. We saw a significant increase on it. And the feeling welcome, we also saw it across race. And we have intervention group and we have a control group. So we match the same amount of sample that people didn't go to the parks with people's like just staying in their houses. And then we have, I put twice active welcoming and it was belonging. I'm sorry. And then we saw it changes in the learning over time. And I think the most significant things, at least for me, is the confidence across group. So we break down people of color and white people. And I know it's a lot of like ethical questions about if you don't know how a person identifies, we went for it. And that's, I think that was a need. So internally, we talk about it as a person of color. I was more comfortable to identify other person of color than white people, but all those conversations happen inside and I know have repercussions, but we really needed a way to kind of move forward or get there. But they also that match when people answered the survey, we also kind of like validate what we were seeing. And we weren't wrong, but I know that's a very tricky research ethical component. And we asked 3 times. So when we didn't have to assume because we have a pre-survey, but in some cases, yes, that happened. But with that, we were able to see the confidence across groups. So we saw that people of color felt more welcome and white people kind of had the same kind of outcome. And before we use the surveys, we also do focus groups to have a better idea what are the questions or how like people where and who was like feeling welcome or not welcome. So those are kind of like learnings. And all of this right now, we are infusing with these principles in other programs and design that we're doing. And it's a lot more to come. And if you want to be part of that conversation, you're welcome. This probably was a lot, and I'm trying to do my best because it took 3 years. We did 4 workshops, and we have also a lot of other stories. Like one of the people in the first workshop, that's Molly. She got married with Guido, that is also around, and they met another couple, and this was 3 years ago. They're still friends. I was trying to get a picture there on their wedding, but Molly is on the, she's having a baby today. So there's a lot going on. But yeah, stuff that we didn't think that we didn't measure that, but it still happened. And so it's like the ripple effect, I think it's other thing that we didn't take in consideration. So yeah, that was part of share what we did in Chattanooga after meeting the Center for Inclusion. Like that was like a ripple effect with partnering, kind of like practice and theory. So now we will transition, and for the transition, well, thank you for listening. We're gonna do this really short exercise to bring us back to transition to Carrie. I invite you to open up your hand, and you're gonna try to match with the breathe in, so that then we'll keep right there. Breathe in, breathe out. So in, out. In, out. One more. Oh, yeah. We're gonna have to do this very.
I think we're
good.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you saw, the people were working in groups. So we're gonna each time that they need, we have these questions for them to answer. So now we're gonna do it again with your partner. If someone is missing a partner, we have people here that can fill out the place. So again, one speaker, one listener, same partner again. And we're gonna do it faster because now you know it. And the question this time, what is your most treasured memory? So I'm gonna allow everyone to think for a moment about what is your most treasured memory. Can be this workshop, or something that happened a long time ago, or recently.
Does anyone need a new partner? We can. So,
Can be one of measures. What's that?
Are you sure there's some issues?
Okay. Use. Three.
Okay, now define who's gonna need it. And again, it's gonna be 1 minute. Same instructions. Please don't ask questions. Don't interrupt. And if you use 30 seconds, 30 seconds are in silence. So we're gonna start now.
Nice. Final. Maybe there. So many others leading up. Aisles. Why the alarm sheet?
Okay, that was 1 minute. Now the listener is gonna reflect back what they just heard. Remember what you can remember. Don't add condiments, and silence is fine. 1 minute.
Is.
Story and positive.
Big ass. Statistics. Beyond the three. Surveillance.
Okay, now the person that was listening is gonna answer the question, what is your most treasured memory? And you again gonna have 1 minute. So the listener now is the speaker.
Just. There. Close your eyes. There's bricks.
I'm so glad that we are not then had our candle blown out. That was really nervous.
I feel like there's metaphorically our candle has a put build. Literally and metaphorically. I love that Emma she went for it.
Okay, that was 1 minute. Now the listener is gonna repeat back what they just heard. So now the listener has 1 minute to actually tell the other person what they learned about that.
So. Reason. Please. This is.
Carrie, I think you might have come unattached.
Oh.
This.
Wait, is this mine?
I think it's connected somehow. Feels a little like having a tail.
It does.
We're like,
These works. They took us. Ding, 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 ding.
Now it's 1 minute. Oh, we get that. So that was 1 minute from the second question. How everyone is feeling with this whole question? One. We have one more. Oh, but no now. It was different from the beginning, from the first one.
I think I got better.
You got better. What about the question? How the question sound? The question is a lot harder. Yeah.
What was harder about it?
We need it.
Yeah, there's just a lot of moments to sit through. That's true.
Did it feel like a more personal question?
Yeah, a lot more emotional, dude. But...
So that's the idea of the progression, that they get personal over time. So this is really good also with like team members or people that we think we know or we talk all the time with them, but actually do it over time in each staff meeting. So that's a really good tip. So now I'm meeting with Kelly.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It was really, and thank you, Daniela. It was really fun to hear the report out of this amazing park project in Chattanooga that's teaching us lessons. And I think as someone, I'm trained as a landscape architect and a forester, and in our education in park and rec, we're not really trained to surface the social impacts that we see and that we intuitively know are there in the work. And it can be really challenging to prove those points and to create the kind of evidence that it takes to change systems and to communicate these important stories. But I think projects like the ones that Daniela and the team led in Chattanooga are really important proof points. I also think that when we're able to prove that a short summer intervention is actually able to reduce prejudice and build belonging over such a short period of time, that seems like a superlative or an exemplar, like something that maybe just has happened that one time. But I know from my work at TPL that actually is a pattern. It's something that happens in a lot of our parks. It's something that's happening all across the country. And I think knowing both the stories and the patterns is really important right now with the sort of state of the world and the sort of status of our society, and knowing where we can invest and where we can lean in when we're looking to build connection. Another thing I love about Dani is that she's a social worker. So she's a person who's doing work in parks that has a really different set of training than I do as a landscape architect and a forester. And I think it's also really important when we think about systems change in our industry and also in the sectors that hopefully adopt practices and policies related to social connection, to sort of understand where those sectors are, like where they're situated. I studied landscape architecture for 5 years, and I studied forestry for 3 years. How many classes do you think I had in community engagement? It's like 0. Like, was there any instruction on how to navigate conflict, interracial conflict, any intercultural conflict? But you have almost 200,000 people in the park and rec sector who are navigating really complicated cultural conditions in their jobs every day. And the team that Dani and I work on, that was supported and stood up by the Center for Inclusion and Belonging, is really focused on making more visible the patterns and practices that actually can make it easier for the park sector to create social and civic impacts in our work. And when we got started, we had a lot of stories, like the stories that Dani's sharing from Chattanooga, we assembled about a dozen staff at Trust for Public Land who work in really different contexts. People who are working on tribal and indigenous lands projects, people who are working at school districts and rural communities and urban communities. And we started to share stories with each other in a structured way to understand what's the stuff we're doing in our projects at TPL that leads to really impressive social outcomes. Even if you think it's just happened once and you think it was a coincidence or an anecdote, what is the stuff? What are you doing? And after about a year of that functionally a qualitative research project, we started to see patterns in ourselves, in our own work. And we translated those patterns into a framework that we published in 2023. So up here is a graphic from that framework. It's called the Common Ground Framework, and you can download it at tpl.org/common ground. And functionally, we found through this qualitative research project that both the practices and the outcomes fell into 3 rough buckets, and those buckets were somewhat sequential. A lot of our work at the very beginning was all about helping neighbors meet neighbors via a park project. So Danny shared an example of the people who got married met in a park.
No, the friends.
Okay, because I do have that story.
Yeah,
like
that's another one. No.
There are all these like amazing examples of people building durable, strong, long-lasting relationships that were formed on day one in a park. Especially, there were several examples of this, of people building cross-identity relationships, and that it wasn't a dialogue about difference or race or culture that created that connection. It was planting a tree together or installing a mural together. So at the very basis of the framework, we documented the practices, the stuff that we do in parks, the way we lead community engagement, and the outcomes that it leads to. And those community relationships over time, we observed lead to new kinds of community identity. So John Powell in the plenary was talking about the sort of process of making sense together, about meaning making, and that the container for that, the sort of salad bowl for that kind of meaning making, can be public space, because you're having to navigate different perspectives and make decisions about sort of this physical manifestation of culture, of the stuff you want to use and see and experience in your neighborhood. And that leads to compromise and perspective sharing. And the swing set I want might not be the swing set you want. So we have to have a conversation about it. So parks in that sense can serve as this container to create new identities, collective identities. And on top of that, our work, when it's most durable, when projects last the longest, when those relationships continue to grow, are also the foundation for massive change that often happens outside the park. So once communities and individuals have built this new collective identity, they've exercised it to design a thing, to build a vision, to build a park. It's very common for them to take that and apply it to other societal problems and challenges, to advocate for a transportation plan, to advocate for fair housing. So for this kind of connection, we supported the Raleigh Parks Department, who applied, recognizing that they had 2 distinct communities that lived in the same zip code that were not interacting with each other. Financial assistant receivers who are participating in a specific program in one of their rec centers, and English language learners who primarily from Central America and Mexico. So these 2 groups, same zip code, coming to many of the same facilities, but not mixing with each other. So to create stronger connections between these 2 groups, they launched a program called Welcome to Raleigh Parks. It functionally created an 8-week summer bus tour of all of the amenities that exist in Raleigh to broaden the experience of those user groups, to see that the park department has more to offer than the single room that's signed up for. And they apply a lot of the same principles that Danny was describing with the bench project around building connections across difference. And after 8 weeks of this program that recruited 8 families from each group, we documented that there were families that at the end were carpooling, were helping each other with childcare, and were still connected 6 months after the program had ended. In Baton Rouge, the park department there applied to us because they were about to make produce a new 10-year master plan for their park department, committing tens of millions of dollars to which parks they were going to improve, which programs they were going to implement. And they had a really hard time getting community feedback on that kind of planning process. So we worked with them to recruit a 15-member group that demographically represented the Baton Rouge parish. And this group supported the park planning agency to give feedback on where those investments were needed. And it surfaced a lot of trauma and complicated legacy related to specific community groups and parks. Baton Rouge has a really complicated park history. Instead of integrating their pool system, they closed their pools down in the 1960s. Some community members remembered that happening. Some community members had no idea that it had ever happened. So this process of forming a planning board, advising on a park budget, created a better plan that was more equitable, but it also created friends among neighbors who'd never met each other before. In Fayetteville, Arkansas, and the state where I grew up, Walker Park at the south end of town is a park that is the home to the region's largest population of unhoused people. And the park department applied to actually bring more focus to Walker Park, bring more people to Walker Park. Their program pitched an idea around a bridging program called Bridging the Gap that engaged a senior center, a youth center, and the unhoused population to participate in activities together at the park. There were line dancing classes, there were potlucks, there were chess tournaments, and over a summer, this kind of curated activation. In our focus groups, in our interviews of participants, it went from people describing each other with their population names as like, oh, I don't normally spend time with teens, or I don't really know about the seniors, or I don't really know about the homeless people, to John is really good at chess. Martha makes the best fried chicken. So after a summer of this kind of programming, it really showed that repeated encounters and exposure could create empathy among groups that almost never interact with each other. And then finally, one of the last projects that we completed was in Greeley, Colorado, which is about an hour outside of Denver. And there were two anchor organizations, a youth center and a city-run community center, or a city-run youth center and a Latino cultural center. They were directly across the street from each other. They applied to build a community garden together. There's a vacant lot next to the cultural center. So members of the cultural center and youth from the city center worked together to build garden beds, to plant them. They planted chilies, tomatoes, and marigolds, and they worked together to plan a Day of the Dead festival. So these two institutions had been next door to each other for 30 years, and they had never worked together. And the simple act of building something together, planting some seeds, created a relationship and a connection that now 3 years later is still active and growing. So these are all bright spots, and they're all stories that, again, can sound like anecdotes, can sound surprising and hard to replicate, but these are generalizable examples. They're examples of what happens when we intentionally design our park system for connection. And TPL published a report earlier this year called Parks, the Great Unifiers. And we had new national data in this report that demonstrates a strong correlation between cities that have good park systems with high investment, high access. And it shows that those cities in the top 25% of park systems across the country, have 26% more friendships across income lines. They have 45% more civic organizations like those cultural centers, and they have more than 60% of community volunteers in those communities. So this is also showing these are not anecdotes. This is a pattern. This is what happens when park systems strategically invest in themselves and invest in their communities. And to make sure that these best practices and these resources are actually making life easier for the park professionals who didn't have community engagement classes, who want to build stronger connections in their communities but don't quite know how, TPL offers a full suite of professional development and training programs to try to build those skills within our sector. So the Common Ground Framework is our foundational roadmap for best practices and outcomes that build connection, and especially connection across difference. We just published 2 weeks ago Grounds for Change, which is a policy roadmap that helps local governments implement things like high quality community advisory boards, participatory budgeting, community engagement policies. We operate communities of practice. So far, we've had 75 cities attend a full community of practice with TPL that focus on a wide variety of topics. One that I'm really excited about that's just starting this month is called Programming with Purpose, which is looking at programming activities that can happen in community centers that build connections across difference. Later this fall, we're publishing the Community Compass, which is an easy to use 9-question survey that measures the social and civic impacts of parks. It's specifically built for park professionals. It makes it easy to use. It has a toolkit that does quick statistics. It does your homework for you. I also never took statistics when I was learning how to be a park and rec professional, and a lot of our audience doesn't have that skill set either. So this tool tries to make that easier. And then we also have Common Ground 101, which is a self-paced online asynchronous training program. If, like me, you're not going to sit down and learn to do community engagement by reading a 50-page academic framework, this breaks it down into bite-sized 10-minute chunks that builds us so slowly over time, and it's easier to share and reflect with your colleagues as you're learning. So here's a QR code. If you want access to these documents and these tools, you can sign up. And the ones that we have, we'll share with you immediately, and then we'll notify you as new tools come out. And when our LOIs release this January to select new on Common Ground pilot projects west of the Mississippi. So that's what I've got. I think we
Homework.
come again.
That's gonna be a homework.
Yeah, this is your homework with your partner.
Quick question
Yeah.
for men. I loved your presentation. All of you were amazing. Specifically, the case study that talked about bringing together like teens, seniors, and unhoused people. I feel like that's one aspect of parks that we don't always talk about. Like, parks are a space for a lot of unhoused people, and usually they're just seen as a threat and just be like, okay, like I come from the city of Philadelphia, a lot of amazing parks. There's one close to my house that stays locked for most of the day and opens up for like a couple of hours in the evening, probably for the kids to play. But I would like to access that park. I would like to be there, right? And from what I've heard from people who've been in the city for a long time, they're concerned that they don't put benches and don't keep the parks always open because they're worried about unhoused people coming in and being a safety risk and threat, right? So what's been your experience with being in this population, and how do we get over this idea that unhoused people come in, they make everything a threat, and that makes it unsafe for everybody?
I think it was helpful to start small. The Bridging the Gap was an 8-week program. It cost $20,000, and it was a quick test to prove a point. And now in Fayetteville, you have advocates from the unhoused community that are giving feedback on a new renovation plan for Walker Park alongside teens, alongside seniors. They can also give feedback to resource providers, to social service organizations about how to make life easier and safer for everyone. So you have advocates that can speak from personal experience that are giving feedback from a wide variety of experiences. And it helps to break down the stigma about what it's like to be in any one of those groups. So in short, I would say start small. It's a really complicated problem that a lot of people are working on.
Any grants you got to Philadelphia anytime soon?
We have an amazing field office in Philadelphia. Reach out to them. I can put you in touch. Danny and I work closely with that team. We do a ton of work in South Philly specifically. So yeah, let's follow up on that.
Sounds good.
I think we're probably about to get told that we're out of time.